territory. We acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past and dedicate ourselves to moving forward in partnership with Indigenous communities in the spirit of truth, reconciliation, and collaboration. So the objectives of our presentation today are going to be create a greater understanding of mental health and mental illness. So this is going to be a great opportunity to build that foundation on the topics that we're going to continue to talk about, such as anxiety, understanding anxiety, worry, and depression and what they look like. These are all topics that you might feel familiar with already, but we're going to get into a little bit more detail about all of them. We're going to challenge the stigma associated with mental health and mental illness and understand why and how it is one of the largest barriers in seeking help. We're going to learn the SET communication model, which is going to give us the opportunity to learn a little bit more about when we want to reach out to others and help them in any way that we think that they might need. We're going to explore mental health resources, whether you feel like you're ready to take action in your own recovery, or if you can pass on the information to people that you feel like might need it. And then finally, our last objective is discovering ways in which you can create change. So we're going to get into just a couple of videos of Huddle Broadway and CMHA. And these are videos that were created for About Let's Talk Day, and they're just going to get into a little bit of resources and things that you can access if you are looking for them. So we're going to start with Huddle Broadway right away.
I'm Stephanie Skaken from Huddle. Today, let's talk about mental health. Huddle Youth Hubs are about transforming how young people and their families in Manitoba access supports for mental health, substance use, and wellness. We offer low-barrier, trauma-informed, and culturally safe services. At Huddle, youth have a voice in their own care. Today, let's create positive change.
Awesome. So now we're going to go into the video for CMHA as well.
Hi, I'm Marion Cooper from the Canadian Mental Health Association. Today, let's talk about mental health. CMHA is in 330 communities across Canada. We believe that everyone should have access to supports when they need them. Mental health is a universal human right. Together, let's promote mental health wherever we live, work, learn, and play. Today, let's create positive change.
Great. So we've talked a little bit about mental health, but now we kind of want to get into what really is it? What is mental health? So like I said, our chat feature is open. We'd like to thank everybody, of course, that's joining us on Teams and Facebook Live, or whether you're accessing the recording after the fact. Now is a great time to reflect on what is mental health. So what do you think it is? What have you learned about it? If you'd like to drop your comments into the chat, we'd love to interact with you that way. If you'd like to just reflect amongst yourselves, whether you're in a classroom setting or you're watching this by yourself, this is a great opportunity to just kind of think about that yourself before we get into the definition. So what is mental health? Now we're going to get right into the definition by the World Health Organization. So mental health is a state of well-being in which the individual realizes their own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, like making tough decisions, coping with difficult situations that might arise, can work productively, and is able to make a contribution to their community. So mental health is just the state of well-being wherever you're at. It's very much like physical health. Physical health, if you were having a physical health challenge, for example, that would be something that you would be prioritizing. If you'd broken an arm, you would seek treatment, you'd see a physician, you might do physical therapy, and you would really prioritize your recovery. And so we would just like to highlight that mental health challenges are no different. People might consider them to be if they are not as visible as physical health challenges, but we'd really like to highlight that mental health is just as important as your physical health, and mental well-being is crucial in your overall health and, of course, your well-being. So people often confuse mental health with mental illness or use them interchangeably. And of course, like I said, just laying that foundation, we'd like to get into what is mental illness. So what is mental illness? Mental illness can affect anybody, regardless of age, gender, sex, background, um, ethnicity, culture. Mental illness doesn't discriminate. And it is characterized by changes in an individual's thinking, emotions, behavior, and relationship with others. So it's also important to kind of think about maybe what your own emotions can cause. So everybody can feel sadness, everybody feels worry, anger, and you might think to yourself, well, that can sometimes change my thinking, my emotions, my behavior, my relationship with others. The difference between that and mental illness is when that starts to affect your day-to-day life, where it really starts to feel like there's a strain on those kinds of things, and mental illnesses are diagnosed. So like we kind of discussed earlier, anxiety disorders, depression, there are bipolar disorders, substance use, just to name a few that you might have heard of. And these are all definitions of what is mental illness, and they're characterized by a broad array of challenges and symptoms. We don't unfortunately have the time to get into all of them today, but that's just kind of a broad understanding of what mental illness is. So given the prevalence of it in our society and how important it is for us to continue to talk about it, we'd like to just have you take a moment and think about maybe what proportion of people in Canada are affected by mental illness. So at any point in their lives, how many people would you say approximately could be affected by mental illness? The answer is 1 in 3. So 1 in 3 Canadians will experience some form of mental illness at some point in their lives. So that really just highlights really how prevalent it is, and really what's going on and what we really need to discuss. So a great way to kind of understand the relation between mental health and mental illness is the mental health continuum. And this is a great model. It really highlights the word continuum. So it means that it's fluid, it continues. So depending on where you're at, where your mental health is, where your mental well-being is, you might be on different sections of this diagram, but that doesn't mean that you're going to exist there forever or that you belong there. And so normally, if I'd seen a graph like this, I'm terrified of math and I would have shied away from it. But this is a really comprehensive way of understanding both and how they relate to each other. So on the right side of the diagram, you'll see severe and or persistent mental illness. So people on the right side here have been diagnosed with mental illnesses. And on the left side, you'll see no or minimal mental illness. So these are people that have had minimal experience whatsoever with mental illnesses. And then on the bottom half, you'll see poor mental well-being, languishing. And then on the top half, you'll see high mental well-being, flourishing. So Bell Let's Talk has created some scenarios and names to kind of place where people might be on this diagram. So first we'll look at Mohammed. So Mohammed has had no mental illness, has been doing pretty well mentally, and has high level of well-being. So he's on the top left of the diagram. Then we have Elena. So Elena has been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, but she has really great connections. She has great support, and she really prioritizes her self-care. And so despite living with a mental illness, she has very high mental well-being. So she is on the top right there. So you can see she's in between high mental well-being and persistent mental illness. Then we have Francis. So Francis is on the bottom right here. He has low level of mental well-being, and he's living with a mental illness. So Francis is a newcomer to Canada. He just arrived from France, and he is experiencing depression. And he's been diagnosed with depression, but he hasn't had any supports. He hasn't had any luck in connecting with a counselor, and he's feeling pretty isolated right now. So he has poor mental well-being, and he is experiencing a persistent mental illness. Now, finally, we're just going to look at Ruth. And Ruth is on the low level of mental well-being with no mental illness. So Ruth has not been diagnosed with any mental illness, but she has recently moved to a new city. She's feeling isolated. She feels like she has no supports. And so she is not doing very well mentally, but she does not have a mental illness. So she's on the bottom left there. And really to highlight this diagram is just to mean that everybody has a bad day. So you might be flourishing one day and you might be languishing the next. And that doesn't mean that that's where you're going to belong or that's where you're going to stay forever. So it's fluid, it's a continuum, and we all have mental health. So we all exist somewhere on this diagram here. So some of the things that might lead us to go from languishing to flourishing are feelings like worry and stress. So these feelings are normal and they are, of course, human instincts. They're there for our survival. And so to start, we'll of course discuss that we all experience both. And worry, for example, is thinking again and again, going over and over in your mind about events that occurred in the past, maybe what's happening in the present, or what might happen in the future. So, for example, I know a lot of us joining today are high school students, so events that occurred in the past might be something like failing a test, and that becomes a cause for worry for you, and it continues on into the present. So you start overthinking everything that you're handing into school now. And then that might even lead into the future with the possibility of, oh my gosh, what if I fail? Like, what am I going to do? And so those things occur in our minds and we'll continue that worry over and over and over again. And then we have stress. So stress happens when there's a change that causes physical, emotional, or psychological strain. It can cause sweating, increased heart rate, trouble sleeping. And these can occur with like any big event that you might have coming up, something like a job interview, something like a presentation, for example. I don't know if you can tell, but I was a little bit stressed coming into this. This is really important to me, and these are really important materials here that we're covering. And so I was stressed. I was nervous and kind of still a little bit am, but I'm very excited to be able to cover these topics with you. And stress and worry are important because they allow you to really prioritize what's important to you and allow you to put in that work where you feel like it's necessary. So given all of that, all of the worry and the stress, I'd like to really discuss that it is okay not to be okay. There's a lot of things going on for all of us in one way or the other. There are many stresses, especially for high school students. There are, we've listed a couple here. There's top stressors and worries of high school students. So things like school, relationships, family issues, social stress. We also, of course, have our chat feature open. If anything's coming to your mind, please feel free to add that in there as well. Yeah, and these are things that are normal, like going into high school, a lot of things are changing. You're trying to find your place in the world. You're trying to maintain relationships that might feel distancing all of a sudden. School is becoming a lot more challenging. I remember going into 9th grade math. It was like one of the most difficult things that I'd ever encountered. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to get through it. I did. I'm here before you today, luckily. But it's okay to have those stressors and those worries. The only issue that can arise from these is when it becomes so persistent that it starts to affect your everyday life, kind of like what we talked a little bit about with the mental illness. So when that starts to become a barrier for you to continue on with the events that you normally would do, that's when it starts to become a cause for concern. And that is when I am going to pass it on to my friend Devin here, and he will take it over from there.
Okay. Thank you, Samira. I am very excited to be with you all here today to talk about anxiety and depression. I know these subjects can be very difficult to talk about. And if you feel like you're becoming a little overwhelmed or you're relating with the material very well, feel free to step out of the classroom, close the computer, and just take a break. And you can join us whenever you are ready. So what is anxiety? The feeling of anxiety is a normal and expected response to a difficult situation. It's what helps you notice danger and keeps you safe until that difficult situation passes. Examples can include conflict at home, deadlines, expectations at school, or fitting in with social groups. It's also important to highlight that some anxiety is necessary, even helpful for us to thrive. It's what motivates people to take action or work hard and meet a goal like cramming for an important exam or staying up all night to finish a project that is due the next day. I know these feelings all too well. When I was a student in high school, I was always leaving my assignments to the last minute. I would stay up all night before the before the assignment was due, and it was that anxious feeling of needing to get my work done that really drove me to hand in that assignment in on time. Now, I'm not suggesting that you students out there stay up all night to finish your assignments beforehand, but I'm simply just highlighting that it's important to realize that anxiety can have some positive feelings. However, when those feelings of anxiousness become amplified and constant, it can change the way we think, feel, and act. Your body begins to react as though there's always a threat present, even when you're doing simple everyday tasks. It can cause problems with sleep or appetite, disrupt schoolwork, learning, and create other unforeseen challenges. Anxiety is the most common mental health challenge in young people today. And when we become overwhelmed and experience high levels of anxiety, we may turn to activities that aren't healthy for us. The rates of anxiety increase when we try to get through it alone and we don't reach out for help. The questions we need to ask ourselves is, how do we create a community where we can share our struggles with one another? When it is spoken, the trend of silence is broken. So occasionally worrying about events such as an important game coming up or being self-conscious in a big group of people are examples of normal anxiety. These are things that we experience perhaps on the daily, the weekly, depending on what it is. Before this presentation started, I know I was a little bit nervous and sweating a little bit, but that's okay. It's normal to feel this way. However, when we constantly worry and consistently avoid social situations, this anxiety begins to affect our lives. These are some signs of an anxiety disorder. As young adults, I feel like sometimes we have negative feelings about the world around us, and I don't blame you. It can be hard to find positives when there's so much negativity going on in the world. Have you watched the news lately? There's nothing but sad and terrible things happening all around the world, including here in Manitoba. The internet can also be a very negative place as well, with social media platforms such as Facebook and Twitter, where people can post and say whatever they want, whenever they want to. We all get sad sometimes. It's a part of life. We get sad when we lose a friend, when a pet runs away, or we finish a really good TV show and now we're faced with a big task, finding something else to watch. I know I get very sad when that happens. When we talk about depression, though, it is a mental illness that affects a person's mood or the way a person feels. It impacts the way people think about themselves, how they relate to others, and how they interact with the world around them. This feeling is more than just a bad day or feeling blue. It is something that sticks with them all day, every day. Signs of depression include feeling sad, worthless, hopeless, guilty, or anxious a lot of the time. Some people tend to feel irritable or angry. People with depression lose interest in activities that they used to enjoy or may withdraw from their friends. It can also affect our ability to concentrate, learn new things, and retain information. You may feel down, hopeless, or find that you don't enjoy the things that you used to like, whether that's sport or art or anything really. Some people say that they feel numb all the time. When we get to be feel depressed, a major tendency is for us to withdraw. It may start to get out of bed in the morning and concentrate on our daily activities, whether that's school, extracurricular activities, anything. You feel as though you're not worthy of anything, and negative thoughts of what's the point begin to set in. Depression isn't something you just get over. It takes a lot of time with a lot of supports to get out of that depressive state. The pressures of growing up can be very hard for youth, especially at a high school age. High school can be very difficult, and sometimes the adults in our lives can overlook the teenage years or forget what it's like to be a teenager at all. It is important for those adults in our lives to understand that mental health challenges of youth are just as valid as those of adults. I know this material can seem heavy, and maybe some of you can relate to those feelings, but we also want to recognize that there is hope. I'm going to throw it back to Samira now, and she's going to talk to us about a program that can help us with these feelings of depression and anxiety. I'm going to throw it over to Samira now.
Thank you, Devin. So now we're going to get into a service that CMHA offers called Bounce Back. So Bounce Back is so great because it helps fill in that service gap for people that are experiencing low mood, mild to moderate depression or anxiety, worry, stress, chronically. Bounce Back kind of fills in that service gap. And before those issues become severe enough that they will have to access other services, Bounce Back kind of fills in that gap there. So patient symptoms might not be severe enough for them to require medical attention. So Bounce Back is great in that it will assign people that sign up from youth ages 15 and up, and also goes into adults as well. We'll be able to assign them with a coach that will kind of stay with them through phone calls and provide them workbooks for them to really take control of their own recovery. They'll be able to focus on the issues that they want to work on. They'll be able to kind of focus on their own goals and make that the main focus of Bounce Back. So Bounce Back is an incredible program. We're going to drop the link into the chat for you to have a look at. If you go into the website and you go onto the register, you'll see all of the eligibility criteria for people to sign up. So it's a great service, and there are so many things that you can get out of it. And so we're going to get right into a video that's kind of going to go a little bit more into detail about Bounce Back and people that have had really positive outcomes from participating in the Bounce Back program.
Hi, my name is Dr. Jody Samra. In my experience as a registered psychologist, anxiety and depression are very common challenges. For some people, these can be lifelong difficulties. For others, they are a response to stressors in one's life.
And it could be just as simple as making a decision on something, but the problem to me seemed like it was so much more.
It felt like something was coming in sideways that was throwing me off my confidence.
Even though I had all kinds of people that would love to listen to me and be around me, when you're in that state, you don't perceive the world to be there for you.
It's common to feel low, stressed out, worried, depressed, irritable, or angry, or even to just feel nothing. The life skills approach used in Bounce Back has benefited many people struggling with low mood, depression, and anxiety. You'll learn how to solve problems, build your confidence, and start thinking helpful thoughts. You'll find out how to improve your sleep and learn some easy ways to get yourself healthy. And you'll learn how to be more assertive, letting other people know what you want in a respectful way.
Providing the Bounce Back DVD to patients is a way of providing some advice in an unintimidating way. The DVD is a simple reminder of how to live life to the fullest, where one can actually learn about how we deal with emotions and we deal with our mood affecting our emotions.
There are a lot of people who deal with mental illness, and a lot of people who deal with mental illness successfully.
Sheila, you've had an opportunity now to view the video. How helpful do you think these life skills are for people that are dealing with mood issues?
I think they're incredibly helpful. I think, sleep and exercise, that's a given. Certainly diet, making sure you put good things into you, not sort of packing on and getting the great big sugar high. That's not going to be good if you're already suffering from anxiety. It's going to create more holes inside you. I know this from experience.
Some of the strengths of the Bounce Back program are the toolkit they give you in order to approach the issues. A lot of them are quite logical, so it's not anything complicated to remember.
I could probably go on for hours about the strengths of the program, but for myself, it was having those tools simplified and laid out for me to feel comfortable enough to break down all those negative thoughts.
The most important thing to remember is that you have the power to change your situation and to feel better. With the right tools and with practice, you can bounce back.
Okay, that was a great video that Bounce Back provided. Thank you, Samira, for telling us a little more about Bounce Back. As we previously mentioned, the link is now in the chat if you want to check it out further. It's a great program to really check into. And yeah, so we're going to move on now to stigma. I'm sure many of us have heard of stigma before. Stigma is the single greatest barrier for people to seek help. The effects of stigma can be long-lasting and deterring people from getting the help that they can really benefit from. This leads to people feeling unhappy and isolated. It can cause them to lose friends, distance themselves from family, and may result in issues surrounding school, extracurricular activities, and important relationships in our lives. This is all preventable if we make the effort to stop stigmatizing behaviors before it can ever get to that point. People may have stigmatizing or discriminatory thoughts or attitudes and may not even realize it. The key is recognizing them, examining where they come from, and working towards changing the hurtful behaviors that they cause. When you share your struggles with someone or reach out to help a friend, this helps reduce the stigma. It reduces the barrier for yourself and for others. So these are some ways that we can reduce stigma. We can be aware of our own thoughts and attitudes, behaviors. We can treat everyone with respect. We can learn the facts about mental health and mental illness. That is something we're doing today. You guys are taking the first step, which is great. You can challenge stigma when you see it and be mindful of the language you use. I know I'm still really bad for that. That's something that I'm still trying to work on to this day. And these solutions don't happen overnight. It takes work and practice to really nail them down. So what are some other ways that we can reduce stigma? If you want to discuss amongst yourselves in your classroom or with a friend that you're watching this with, and you can shoot us an answer in the chat, that'd be awesome. Okay, we got a few answers. That's great. I love to see these answers that we're getting here. Yeah, all very great ways to help reduce and stop stigma. So now we are going to hear from our colleague Santiago, a youth support worker at Huddle Broadway, who will be sharing with us some of his lived experience of being a young person who understands some of the challenges that high school presents, what it's like working with youth at his job, and some other tips to help us face mental health head on. So we're going to check that out right now.
Hi, my name is Santiago. It's so good to be with you today as we highlight the importance of our mental health and our well-being. I'd like to take the time to share with you about my mental health and my lived experience, along with how I create meaningful connections in my personal and professional life. Really, I want to get started and kind of just share who I am. I mean, I graduated high school not so long ago as well. I can say it's been almost 3 years or 4 years now, and I'm quite young, but I've stepped into the mental health profession world, and I really have taken a stand, and I really love what I do, but we all have our personal challenges and journeys that life takes us on. And personally, I had my own life journey as well. For me, we deal with a lot of anxiety, worrying, and depression, but the two that stuck out to me were anxiety, and I worried a lot in high school, right? In high school we go through a roller coaster of emotions, and it's a big jump. You go from middle school and you jump into high school, and you got all these people you've never met before, and there's so many new faces and so many things that are thrown at you, like what are you gonna do after this, and how are you gonna work, and how are you gonna get a job, right? And like, where are you gonna go to? So there's the who, what, where, and why, and how, and it's just so much that gets thrown at you, and it's not fair at times, but how do we deal with it? And personally, I felt that, how do you deal with it, right? And what was I gonna do? There were times in high school where I didn't know what I was gonna do, and I wasn't very academically inclined, but I had passions. Like I loved English, but I didn't like math and science, and a lot of schools and places, they throw the university route at you, and a lot of people might get very scared towards that idea. And I can say I was one of those people. Like for me, I did not like math, and I did not like science, but it is mandatory for where I went to high school to take science until grade 10, and I was not good at it at all, and I struggled. But in order to move on in high school, you got to pass courses, And, you know, for both of those courses, math and science, I just skimmed by. But also keep in mind, you know, like, where does like anxiety and worrying come into this? Well, let me tell you, um, when it came to, you know, looking into your future, a lot of the courses in university require you to have a one science at least or one math. Well, I mean, math is mandatory, right? You know, we all got to do math, whether it's essentials, pre-cal, or the other ones. Yeah, I can't remember. But I mean, a lot of the stuff that I was interested in required you to have one science. But at the time, I had dropped science in grade 10 because it wasn't needed after that, and you can just fill it in with another class. So I mean, I wasn't doing science, but also like I was worrying about what am I gonna do for the rest of my career after this, right? Like at the time, I didn't want to go to university. That didn't interest me. And, you know, like I eventually just kind of settled for another career that I have left in the past already, but I wanted to be a plumber, and, you know, I just stuck to that. But I just did that because it didn't require like a science. It just required a math that wasn't like a pre-cal or something else. I can't remember. But you know, like I did that for a year, and I was very unhappy because I didn't want to be doing plumbing. And, you know, it was just something I did because I had no choice, because I didn't take the science. You know, that caused a lot of worrying for me, and anxiety, and what am I going to do in life, right? You know, I thought I was going to be a failure, and I thought that I wasn't going to go anywhere, right? You know, so eventually I dropped plumbing after graduating out of high school, right? And I found a purpose in life, and, you know, it took me some time, but, you know, that journey was almost a 4-year journey, and it takes time. Like, you know, things don't happen overnight. You know, I know a lot of us can be impatient sometimes, and, you know, we want things done right away. But we just got to understand that, you know, when it comes to our mental health, we got to take care of ourselves, and, you know, like, understand that things don't happen overnight. And, you know, you're the only person that can kind of start your journey, but you can always seek help from others. What leads me to one of my points, right? You know, importance of our mental health, you know, Bell, let's talk, and, you know, our well-being. But, you know, it's always important to check on yourself, and, you know, just make sure that you're doing something that you love, and something that you enjoy, right? Because there was me stuck doing a career that I didn't like. You know, I mean, I made money, but money isn't always everything, and I was very upset coming home after work. And, you know, I didn't want to do that, and, you know, I was stuck with it from a personal decision I make. But, you know, it's not your fault or not my fault. I just didn't want to do that, and I was thrown with so much anxiety in high school, like, on what you're going to do. And, you know, everyone else is going to college or university, and you know, you don't want to do that because you don't like the courses you need to do, and there's so much that goes around it. But, you know, like, I just felt pressured, and, like, I felt so, like, my walls, like, where I was in like a little box, you know, I couldn't figure out what to do, and I was just stuck doing that what I came to my mind first. But, you know, like, let's not talk about me, let's talk about everyone else. There's so much fear in society to get help. You know, like, I could have gotten help for, like, my life decisions, but in high school, because there's guidance counselors, but there was so much stigma and negativity towards getting help even. So I was afraid to be judged by my peers and my friends, right? Like, you know, as much as my friends would support me, I was afraid that they would judge me for talking to a guidance counselor, with the fear of thinking that there might be something wrong with me. So, I mean, at the time, I was not aware about the mental health initiatives and stuff, but I was just under the impression that, you know, I should deal with this on my own and it'll get better. And, like, just, you know, the simple saying, be a man and man up. But that's just not the way I should have done it, and I should have talked to someone, and I should have done it. But, you know, I can look back now and say I should have, could have, would have. But it's totally okay, right? You know, trial and error. Like, that was a trial that life puts us through, and, you know, I definitely managed it, but it took me time. And now look where I am. I work for Huddle Broadway as the peer facilitator, and I talk to hundreds of youth that feel the same way every weekend. And, you know, they all go through their personal battles, and, you know, our battles are different, but just know that, you know, it's okay to get help from someone, and, you know, you're not going to be judged for it. And, you know, that simple decision you make at 16 or 17, right, could be very, very crucial in your later on life, and, you know, it could have the greatest effect. So, you know, just having that idea in your head where, you know, I shouldn't feel judged for getting help or talking to a professional. Or, you know, maybe you're dealing with something right now, but you have an idea what you want to do later on in life, but you're afraid to get help from a professional, you know, just take that step and get in there, because like, you know, we talk to many youth every day here, and we want to make sure everyone's all right, but it's important to check on your other people in your life and just make sure they're doing well. So you know what, all I ask from you today is, there's a lot of asking to do in Bell Let's Talk Day, but one thing that you could set for yourself as a personal goal is, you know, reach out to your friend or a family member that you haven't spoken to in a while and just ask how they're doing, right? You know, to say, hey, how's it going? And then, you know, that conversation can lead to, you know, maybe them feeling good about themselves and you feel good about yourself. So if, you know, for Bell let's talk to people that we love and we haven't talked to in our daily lives in a while. So I hope everyone liked what I had to say, and thank you for listening. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Santiago, for sharing with us all today. I think many of us, especially those of us who are in high school, can relate to many of the struggles that Santiago faced during his time in high school. From the struggle to get good grades, to worrying about the future, to feeling like he was put in a box with no room to really move. You know, all these things can be overwhelming. And the question that comes from this is, how can we help ourselves and our classmates to cope when we're feeling overwhelmed? One of the most impactful things we can do is check in on one another. And by checking in on one another, and I mean, what I mean by checking in on one another, I mean more than just, hey, how's it going? And passing your friend in the hallway and not asking deeper questions. But really checking in and having a conversation with them and asking them how they're really feeling and sitting down with them and doing that. So you may be wondering, well, Devin, how do we do this? That's a great question. I'm glad you asked it, because I'm going to be introducing a great tool that we can use to help check in with someone. So this is the SET communication model. This is something that we're going to learn, and hopefully we can use and put it into practice. Language that we use can be a major barrier for those who are struggling. If I'm struggling and I hear my friend using language and words such as crazy and psycho to describe certain things, I might not want to seek help from that person, which can really suck, because, you know, he's my good friend and I really want to share it with him. But you feel that there's a barrier there, that you might feel judged. The SET model is a tool that you can use to help reduce stigma and bias, and shows that you're here to support this individual in a positive space. So we're going to start with S. S stands for support. So this is where we begin the conversation with the individual. We want to begin with a statement that conveys a fundamental level of respect and caring. It may be as simple as, I hope we can work this out, or I care about you, or I want what's best for you. As the old saying goes, people don't care what you know unless they know that you care, which I think is so true and so strong. We're going to move to the E now. E stands for empathy. So this is where we want to create a space to be an active listener. We're not here to put on our fix-it caps, and we're not here to silver line everything and say that everything's going to be okay. We want to create an environment that we can really show our support, that we're here to listen. Statements such as, I don't even know what to say right now, but I'm just so glad that you share this with me, can go a long way in demonstrating empathy. And finally, the T, truth. Truth is where we create avenues for change. This can be very difficult, as many individuals that are struggling with a mental illness become very stuck and are resistant to change. When we show how we feel about what has been occurring, using statements like, I want to help you, or I may have some resources for you to check out, shows that you're sharing your truth and that you want to support them on their road to recovery. This model is a very practical way to start the conversation with someone who is struggling. Here we have included some guidelines and phrases you can use when reaching out to someone. It covers a variety of different situations, which can be very helpful. Once you've conveyed a basic level of support and empathy for another person, you've already taken down that barrier, which is the first step, which is great. We like to use the analogy of planting a garden when talking about the SET model. First, you have to clear the weeds with the supportive comments. Then you prepare the soil with providing some empathy. And then only then, once that stuff is prepared and ready to go, is that we plant the seed of helping, of what we want our message to be to this person, which is great. This is another example of how we can reach out to someone. It can be as simple as sending them a text message and seeing how they're doing. I know that many high schoolers are glued to their iPhone 10, 11, 12, 24, whatever we're at these days. I can't keep track anymore. But whatever, this could be another great avenue for change. As we see in this example, they're using I statements and asking questions to get to the bottom of things and to set the stage for the individual to really share how they're feeling. This is a great example of SET that we learned a couple minutes ago. And it's important to remember that reaching out and starting a conversation with someone helps reduce the stigma and creates that community of support that we had talked about earlier. Okay, so this is we're going to do a quick summary of some key messages and some highlights and some points that we've been making throughout this presentation. So number one, everyone has mental health. Everybody. Anyone can experience a mental illness at any time. Your mental illness does not define you. You are not your mental illness. We are here to say that you are not your mental illness. You are so much more than that. You are unique. You are special. You are you. Stigma is not only hurtful, but also prevents people from seeking help, as we just mentioned. What we want to do is reduce that stigma as much as we can. And part of that is, reaching out. Reaching out can be the most effective through support, empathy, and truth. That SET model that we had just learned. The only way we get good about talking about mental health and being a good friend is by practicing these help-seeking behaviors. Think about the first time you went on a date with someone. It was probably really awkward and you didn't know what you were doing. And it seemed kind of awkward, right? I know I sure as heck felt awkward on my first date, but we don't want to talk about that. Or maybe it's the first time you kissed someone. You're probably very nervous and you weren't sure what to expect. But the more you practice, the better you got at it. The same goes with practicing the SET model and reaching out to others. In addition to the SET model, we have included some resources that you can access. So firstly, the best resources you have as young people are the people that you see almost every day, whether it's your teachers, your guidance counselor, your gym teacher, any kind of trusted adult, a coach, a director, something. These are people you can go to and connect with, and they can help you connect with resources that you need. We have also included a long list of resources that CMHA provides that we're going to share with you in a minute. Also, as youth mental health promotion coordinators, you can always connect with myself or Samira. We're here at CMHA. We're always here to talk with youth, interact. We love interacting with youth. I know that's something I really enjoy. So if that's something that you need, send us an email or connect with us, and we'd be more than happy to have a conversation and help you connect to resources that you need. So now we're going to go to our list of resources here. So we've included on this slide tons of different resources that we have available. We included a wide variety of CMHA programs, such as our Wellbeing Connection podcast, which is hosted by one of our coworkers. It's a great podcast. We do it once a month. We bring on people from CMHA or some special guests, and we just talk about mental health. Some ideas about mental health, that type of thing. We've included some apps here. I'm going to give you guys a bit of a introduction to one of our apps that we strongly recommend. Kids Help Phone. I'm going to go into Kids Help Phone in a minute, but these are just some examples of some other resources within CMHA and then branching out of CMHA as well that you can access. So these are all really great apps and different things you guys could check out. Kids Help Phone. I'm sure many of you have heard of Kids Help Phone before. Great tool, great resource to have if you're 24 hours, if you're feeling in distress or feeling down, or you're feeling alone and just somebody you want to connect with. You can text the word connect to 686868 and you will be connected with a mental health professional and you can engage in that conversation. It's great to do. You can do it anytime that you want. And it's always there. Another thing you can do is access them online at kidshelpphone.ca. And you can also talk to them by phone. at 1-800-668-668. So this is a great tool to have if you are feeling down, or if you know somebody who needs to have a conversation with a mental health professional. So that's really great. We're going to talk quickly about Calm. Calm is a great app for us to have. It focuses on meditation, sleeping, relaxing, kind of just taking a minute to yourself and being present in the moment and just slowing yourself down, because I know sometimes as students we can get carried away with how busy and how all these competing priorities that we have in our lives, whether that's homework, extracurricular activities, friends, being glued to our phones. I know a lot of us are glued to our phones all the time. So Calm is a great app for us to be able to take a minute and slow down. We can do some meditation. They have some soothing music you can fall asleep to. Yeah, they have tons of great options. So I mean, I highly recommend checking that out. And now I'm going to get Samira here to come share with us about some other resources.
Thank you, Devin. So Bell Let's Talk is a great toolkit. There are plenty of activities that you can interact with to help increase your self-care. This is a great one. You can get some friends together or work on it by yourself. There are quite a few options here that you can work on in increasing your own mental well-being. So a few examples here are write a positive affirmation and recite it in the mirror, connect with your community, talk to a loved one about your feelings. That one was really highlighted in our presentation today. And we will also be dropping the link into the chat box as well for people to be able to access the toolkit that Bell Let's Talk has offered us. So now, just to wrap up, we're going to talk about just ways that you can create change. So some great ideas for the next steps. Break the silence. You can do a lot just by starting conversations. So whether that's with your classmates, your friends, your peers, taking that first step and bringing down those barriers is really important. So we really encourage you all to talk as much as you can about mental health, about mental illnesses with whoever and however many people that you can.
Number 2, pass along the facts. We've shared a lot of information with you here today. What we don't want you to do is just sit there and listen to the information, let it go in one ear, out the other ear. That's not what we're here for. We're here to give you tons of information, tons of resources that you can use. So you can use these in your own lives, and you can share these with somebody who wasn't here today. And you can educate them about stigma or barriers or anxiety, depression, or living the SET model. We want to pass along these facts, because the bigger we spread this, the more impact we have of breaking down that stigma. None of us, we don't have to be mental health professionals to have a conversation. I'm not a mental health professional, neither is Samira, but we're here to have the conversations. We're here to promote mental health. And when we do those things, a lot of good things happen.
Yeah, so there are a lot of resources that you can access to continue to learn more about mental health. We're all still learning. This is a learning curve for everybody. There's so much to discover. And so we put a couple links here, and we also encourage you to do your own learning. Look into things the way that you want to, but these are some great resources that you can access. Let's Talk, Winnipeg, Manitoba, CMHA, and the CAMH. Thank you very much. We would like to thank you all for your time today. And
yeah, we're going to open it up to some Q&A. If you have any questions for us, we'll be sticking around to answer some of your questions.
Feel free to add those into the chat box. Thank you very much.